seasons.
Welcome back to Whiskey Uncut.
That's really hard when there's no music with the
I know.
intro, because it's like just a dead start
Yeah, no. So, we are back
after a
and
rather long hiatus.
a rather long hiatus that we'll explain here in a second. So I'm joined today by James, as always.
What's up, Paul? It's been a while, man.
It has
It's
been a while,
It's nice to see your handsome face again.
and it's gonna be a while.
It's gonna be a long time.
It's gonna be a long time.
Yeah.
So, part of why it's been like 4 weeks or 5 weeks, I think, since our last episode.
Yeah.
Is because James has been traveling, tasting a bunch of whiskeys and
I
stuff.
have been.
For Two Souls, and then right when you got back, I was traveling,
Yes.
and then I was traveling again, and so
And I think I was traveling again because I
yep.
just was away for my birthday.
But you are going to be traveling permanently.
I'm going to be leaving for a long distance trip here in the next like 4 days.
Yep. So James is moving to another state,
Yeah. Yes.
and I'm very sad about this
Aw. That's so sweet.
because I won't have my podcast whiskey drinking buddy. However, we do plan to continue the podcast.
Yes, you're gonna be shipping me a little podcast care package.
Yep.
And we're gonna be doing it remotely. So
We may I'm not sure if it will help us do it more frequently because we'll be remote or not, just because of the logistics of getting samples to both of us. Oh, I forgot to unplug the mini fridge. The lights were
the
dimming.
lights just dimmed. No, I think it will help. I think it will help us do it more frequently, particularly given each of our circumstances and what we're doing now in terms of jobs and family stuff. So I think
Right.
it will. I think it will probably make it more frequent.
But we may just have to adjust the way we do the podcast a little bit in terms of like necessarily trying the same stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe what we do is kind of like, and I'm just thinking out loud here, with the people.
I'm sure you didn't think about this.
I didn't think about this at all.
No.
But maybe what we do is a little more like you review a whiskey, each week or something, or 1 week, and then the next week I review a whiskey and kind of bring it, and then talk about more topical stuff rather than trying to always have the same stuff to drink. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see, because otherwise we got to plan ahead, and that's maybe not our
it's
strong
that's
suit.
good. That's not good. I'm used to walking in and like in the moment figuring out what we're talking about, like today,
Right.
for instance.
Additionally, shipping costs, like for shipping like small samples, like
It's
when I
dumb.
send out the care package to Axel and others, it's like $17 to
Right.
ship like 6 of these like mini things, which is quite a bit of money. So,
And I think there's sometimes
especially to do that every week.
Right. I think there's sometimes where we'll have the same bottles, obviously,
Mhm.
because our collections overlap a little bit, so we can do that easy. Some of these, like I could go out to a local store in Texas where I'm at and buy a little one, and you can buy a little one.
Right.
So we can kind of do it that way. But I do think we're going to have to come up with something where maybe I talk about a whiskey and we have a major topic that we're covering, and then you try a whiskey and
Right.
we continue talking about it.
Right.
So,
And or
yes.
we get the brands to send us 2
Doubles.
doubles samples
Duplicates.
of everything.
Yeah, that's
which-
what I need is more whiskey.
Yeah.
Dude, that's what. So you do not understand how much whiskey you have until you have to pack it.
Yep.
And I was packing my whiskey and I was like, I have problems. Like I'm moving and I got everything down to like one small trailer, like one small U-Haul trailer, and 90% of it is whiskey. It's like whiskey and clothes. And that's about it.
Yeah. So, we're going to, we'll let you guys know as we figure this out.
But it will continue some way.
Yes, it will continue some way. And for our Patreon members, for those on the tasting tier, because we haven't been doing the show for a while, you'll get catch-up boxes, or I will refund you for the months that we missed, because obviously, like, I didn't have anything to send you because we weren't doing the
Yeah,
show.
I say we double or triple up on them.
Yeah.
Send them a bunch of whiskey.
And for those of you supporting us at the other tiers, season 4 shirts, I'm working on it. I haven't decided what I wanted to do, because I don't want to do the exact same like design or whatever. I kind of thought maybe I'd pick one of our slogans. So maybe we get people to like vote on it like twice as well, or something that's been like an inside joke.
Yeah, I like that idea. That's good.
We might do one of those for season 4 shirts, and then obviously
they're just smooth. That's good. Yeah, I like it.
So I'm working on that, and let's see, any other housekeeping items? No, but we will keep you all posted when we figure out what's going on and the new format, because we'll have to get James set up with, like, he's an old man, so he doesn't know how to use a microphone or a camera or any of that.
There's like cables and stuff I need to do. It's gonna be tricky.
Yeah, I've got a concept of how that's gonna work, but we'll have to see what your new space is.
Yeah, for sure.
So we're going to continue from last week.
And I got here and I was like, I forgot what we did. But yeah, we were doing that 90
proof bourbon showdown.
Yeah.
Bonanza. So last week we had 8 90 proof bourbons that we tried. I believe, I'd have to roll the tape back to double check, but I believe Eagle Rare 10 and Peg Leg Porker won out.
Yes, those were the top 2. I do remember that much, yeah. So today we have
a new smattering.
8 more. Yes. And then if we're not hammered by the end of that, we will try them side by side with the Eagle Rare and the Peg Leg Porker
to declare victor.
See who wins. We'll rank them.
Yep. So this is going to be our lineup today is going to include Weller Special Reserve.
Yummy.
The Nelson Greenbrier, the Buffalo Trace, just regular Buffalo Trace, Maker's Mark, Bullet, Gentleman Jack. So we have a couple Tennessee whiskeys here with the Nelson Greenbrier and Gentleman Jack, Woodford Reserve Standard, and then Woodford Double Oaked,
which we all know that Paul loves.
Now, technically, Woodford and Woodford Double Oaked are cheating because they are 90.4 proof. So
and we know that we can tell the difference between 90 and 90.4.
Well, obviously, James, we're experts.
Yeah.
Tater Dom is in the chat, putting a couple glasses of whiskey. Thanks for joining us. And John Cloud, cheers. Thanks for checking in with us. Hope you guys enjoy. So, are we starting? Did you put these in any order, James?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's start with my favorite, the Weller Special Reserve.
Well, James, first of all, you got to be a little.
No, I refuse to be. I refuse to be unbiased when it comes to Weller Special Reserve.
It might win.
It will not win. I guarantee you, it will not win. So, if you haven't listened to the podcast before, I notoriously hate Weller Special Reserve, and
unfairly.
No, it is not unfairly, and it was kind of a joke among the bourbon sippers group for a while because I disliked it so strongly. Mm-hmm. And so we decided to do a wheated bourbon blind tasting, and they were like, I bet James is gonna like this better than he thinks. And I ranked it dead last by a long shot. And I didn't know that it was it because I hated it so much I didn't drink it. And so I have a long relationship with this bottle.
Okay. Here's what I don't understand about your disdain for Weller Special Reserve.
Oh God.
It tastes like cherries.
It tastes gross.
It's
not good.
It tastes strange.
It's not good at all.
It's kind of medicinal tasting. Like that cherry cough syrup you get as a kid.
Yeah. That's what's off-putting about it. It's got a really bitter kind of medicinal finish to it that is just unpleasant.
It also only has that note.
That's it. There's nothing else going on.
There's not much complexity here. I will say, I think the aroma is fine on this. The aroma is okay.
Okay.
but but the palate, it reminds me, the analogy I think of when I think of this is like Macallan 12 with Scotch, where it's like the Macallan 12 has this very particular Macallan taste to it
Yeah, and you're not a big fan of that.
that's like a lot of people find kind of off-putting on the sherry cask 12. It's like the slightly oily, sulfury kind of sherry note that I describe as like a wood varnish kind of character.
That makes sense.
It's like particular to that one bottle that they released. And so I kind of feel like this falls in the same vein.
Yeah, and this is one of those that it pains me to see, like, buy, one bottle per customer signs on this. And I see people post pictures and they're like, finally found one. And I'm like, sweet, you should take it back. Like, it's like, you should save your money and buy something else. It really pains me that just because the Weller name is sought after, that this one became sought after as well, because it is not a good whiskey in my opinion. Yes, it's cost effective. See, I'm not using the word cheap. It's cost effective, but there's still much better bottles at that price.
Right. You sound like a brand rep.
I am
talking about their entry level product.
I would drink.
This is a cost effective or value purchase, not this is our cheap one.
Yeah, you're being efficient with your money, right? But yeah, this doesn't do it for me.
Okay, so
we'll move on from that one.
Yeah,
I don't want to drink anymore.
We can move on. The thing I do understand about people being a fan of it though is because it does have a unique flavor. And so
that's not why people are a fan of it. Nobody's out there going, "Oh, I like this one for the unique flavor profile." They like it because it has the Weller name on it.
Yeah, well, but in addition to that, it does taste. It stands out.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a good thing in this case.
I don't dislike it nearly as much as you do.
Yes, you do. You just want to be contrarian.
All right. So what's next?
So this is the Nelson Greenbrier. And it says handmade sour mash whiskey. This is the Tennessee whiskey. And most people they don't know the name Nelson Greenbrier. They know Belle Meade. Right. And Belle Meade was their sourced line. They got that from MGP.
Sourced, but then finished, mostly.
Most of the time. They also had the cast strength version and the blended versions and a couple others. But for a long time, that really drove a lot of the business at Nelson Greenbrier, but they always had this idea of doing a Tennessee whiskey. They do a bourbon now as well. And so this is their own distillate in a Tennessee whiskey form. And this is what they really wanted to do. This is based off, it's one of those stories where they found somebody's recipe, like the granddad's recipe.
The great grandfather.
Yeah, tacked to a tree or in a basement or like in an attic or whatever it was, right?
Yeah.
And they decided to replicate it, and that's what this is.
Right. So I got to go to this distillery. It's a pretty cool distillery. Although I went during COVID, and so you weren't allowed to go in and see anything for the most part.
And you saw my friend, right?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I enjoyed the experience, though. It's worth going to. I can't remember what city is it in.
It's Nashville.
Nashville? Okay. That makes sense. I was in Nashville, but I thought perhaps I had stopped on my way back out somewhere else.
No, you did
just
not.
to go there. So it's in Nashville.
Yeah. So the one thing that I've had this a number of times. I got one of the first bottles when it was released because I was super excited to see. I wrote my friend Cliff, and I was like, hey, like, I need a bottle of this. I wanted to see what it was like right away. The nose is very, very distinctive. It's very grainy. There's very much a grassy kind of mashy note to it.
Yeah. This has what I associate with like craft whiskey.
Yeah.
Right. What I think of as craft whiskey it's a little rough around the edges. It tastes like it came from a farm.
It does.
You know,
it has that barnyardy kind of note to it.
Right. But I don't think it tastes that way in a negative way. I think it's more of a characterful way.
Characterful?
Characterful.
Wow,
I bet that's a word if you look it up.
somebody fact check Paul.
Hey,
on his
Josh Fritz, fact check me on characterful if that's a word. So yeah, by comparison, especially to the Weller, like it tastes a little rougher on the edges, but it
very
also,
much so, yeah.
but it has a lot more drawing me to it than the Weller.
It's unique. I will say that it sort of reminds me of a really young American single malt, where you get that sort of barnyardy, grassy kind of funky note to it, which surprises me given the mash bill for this. But it is kind of corn heavy too at the same time. It's a weird blend of things for me.
Yeah.
I don't dislike it, but I don't like it either. It's certainly not my favorite. And I think this is up a price tier, right? This is kind of in the 30 something range.
Yeah, I think it was $35.
Yeah, whereas a lot of these are like, $20,
Right.
$25. So it's kind of a bump up too, just because it's it's a smaller produced product, but it's rough for me. It's rough.
Now keep in mind, James, prior to tasting this one, Weller Special Reserve was our number 1 bourbon in this lineup.
Was it?
It was, because it was the only one we tasted. So it was currently in spot
it's
number
now
1.
number 2. Let's see how far it drops.
All right, I do agree. I think the Nelson is better than the Weller Special Reserve.
Yeah, if I was going to pick one of the two, I would definitely pick the Nelson. But it's still not my favorite. And I know from trying these others that it's not going to be my favorite of the group.
Just off memory.
Yeah, I'm just giving people a little bit of a a sneak peek there.
Sneak peek. All right.
I am going to say that I also don't want to like this one, and my guess is I'm probably going to like it a lot more than the others.
Yep. All right. Number 3 comes in from Buffalo Trace.
Yeah. And by the way, in all of my travels lately, I've been in lots of airports, and I've been in lots of cities, and I slept in some airports and maybe got some whiskey while I was getting ready to sleep. And I'm finding Buffalo Trace in more and more places, whether it's at bars, in airports, in liquor stores. I'm starting to see it pop up a little bit more frequently. I'm still not seeing Eagle Rare, but I am starting to see more Buffalo Trace. So I'm thinking this is becoming finally maybe a little bit more what it was intended to be.
Yeah,
which is a good mid-tier bourbon that you can buy at a good price.
Well, I got to say, just from smelling it, it's much better than the other two.
Better. Yeah, it's leaps and bounds better. And I think Breaking Bourbon just did an article on this because there was some big anniversary for Buffalo Trace. And their whole point was like, they're still doing it well. Like it's still a very crowd-pleasing, crushable bourbon.
Especially at $29.99.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to beat that.
Yeah. Josh, I was asking you to fact check me on characterful as a word.
Yeah.
James doesn't believe it. Yeah. Tasting it, what do you think? Better?
I like it, and that makes me angry. There's a little bit of that cherry note to it that you get in the Weller, but it's much more refined. There's a lot of vanilla. I always get a lot of vanilla with Buffalo Trace.
Yep.
And then there's more barrel note. Like you can tell it's an older, more refined product.
Elegant.
You can say elegant if you want.
It's all relative.
It is. It is. But you can tell that it's a well manufactured. Like Buffalo Trace is a well-oiled machine when it comes to releasing this product. And from my perspective, it's always pretty consistent. There have been a couple bottles where people have given us in past seasons where like, this is weird. I don't know what happened to this. But it's really consistent. It's drinkable. A lot of people like it. You can take it to a party. You can put it in a cocktail. It's got a lot of flexibility. And I think it punches above its weight.
Yeah. I do think there's noticeably more oak flavor to this, but without the strange bitter finish from the Weller Special Reserve.
Yeah.
Which makes me wonder how they get that flavor in the Weller Special Reserve. I wonder if it's just the wheated mash bill in combination with like the particular age and where they're pulling it from the warehouse, that it's just like at a weird spot in the flavor development process, or what?
I think it's every barrel they try that they're like, this tastes like piss. They then push it aside and they make Weller Special Reserve out of it. That's what I think. Because those barrels have to go somewhere, right? Like, what are you gonna do with them?
Yeah, I guess so.
So you just blend them together and hope for the best, and you get Weller Special. I mean, you don't want to waste it. So
Yeah.
what are you gonna do?
This is what happens when you let James take a month off from the podcast. Is
I come back all shitty.
he comes back all grumpy and he
I'm
just
older.
wants to pick a bone with everybody.
I'm 48 now, not 47. Like I'm just a grumpy old man, and I can't get the damn Maker's Mark open. Paul, we should have done this before the podcast. There,
Yeah.
use your strong hands.
Oh my gosh.
I tried too. So I think we both agree while you're messing with that with your shirt there that so far the Buffalo Trace is the best, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm curious to try it against Maker's Mark because
I think it's gonna crush Maker's Mark
they're
my
kind
memory.
of in the same sort of category
They
in
are.
terms
Maker's
of
Mark's like $24, right?
yeah,
A bottle.
Yeah, availability, pricing. I mean, Maker's Mark is you're never gonna struggle to find Maker's Mark, but back in the day when Buffalo Trace was readily available, these two were kind of next to one another on the shelf a lot.
Yeah, my memory of Maker's Mark is always that I think of weeded bourbons as being gentler,
Yeah,
and I'm always surprised how
Then
rough
It's not.
Maker's
It's not
Mark
gentle.
is not gentle at all. Yeah,
The nose is fine.
yeah,
It smells sweet and spicy.
yeah, and you do get a little bit of that weeded sugar cookie kind of. You get a hint of that in there.
It
but
smells noticeably spicier than like if you smell Buffalo Trace in comparison. Buffalo Trace smells like candy.
Yeah, very very vanilla.
Yeah, it smells very sweet, fruity, vanilla forward. The Maker's Mark smells rougher and it smells spicier.
Yeah.
And more along the lines of like a toasted wood rather than like a dark char wood. So it smells a little bit younger, even though I don't necessarily think it is.
From the comments, Josh Fritz says, "For the record, there is no such thing as a good Maker's Mark." Now,
I will argue with that.
yeah,
There are some good Maker's Marks.
yeah,
Just not this one.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, that's rough.
It really doesn't taste like anything.
No, it tastes like whiskey flavored
Water.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean that's really surprising because I would say the aroma is a little. I expected it to have a bolder flavor to it than the Buffalo Trace, just off the aroma.
It does not.
It certainly does not.
No. And that's really sad because I think a lot of places where you go, Maker's Mark is going to be about as good as it gets, right?
There's that bitter kind of.
Yeah.
Okay. However, where do you rank it with respect to Weller Special Reserve and Nelson Greenbrier?
Where do you think I rank it in relation to Weller Special Reserve, Paul?
Because here's the thing. I think it's worse than Weller Special Reserve.
I don't.
You don't?
I think it's... nothing is worse than Weller Special Reserve. So that's last. I think for me, it's tied with the Nelson Greenbrier.
So maybe we're taking this one out of James' rankings. He can't be fair.
Don't count me. I think it's similar to the Nelson Greenbrier to me. They're both not good, but not bad in a very similar way. And so I think that's what I'm gonna stick with. But they're all a large step behind Buffalo Trace.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I just tried the Weller Special Reserve again.
It's undeniably bad.
Yeah.
So it's
okay, but here's the thing. Is it better to have a good amount of flavor that's bad flavor, or
there's a lot of bad,
or
so that makes it better,
or have no flavor?
I'd rather have no flavor. I would rather have no flavor. More bad does not equal good. And I will say this too. I think I can make a cocktail out of Maker's Mark. Because at least it adds "quote unquote" whiskey flavor.
Right.
Weller will ruin any cocktail I make out of it.
You know what the Maker's Mark makes me think of is like if LaCroix made a which
like
there was
sparkling.
I'm pretty
water.
sure that I think that's what we said about like Jim Beam White last time or something.
We did.
Or no, Jim Beam White was like kind of appley and sweet, but there was
that was the Clyde May. I think it was the Jim Beam White where we were like, this just tastes like water.
There was one though that had the exact same, gave me the exact same impression of like essence of whiskey.
like
You
you
know?
like you sprinkled a little whiskey in
Right.
your water. So now we're on to Bullet, which I have to admit I have not had Bullet
Very often.
in years.
Hmm.
And if I remember correctly, Bullet is
Ooh.
Four Roses distillate. So it's sourced from Four Roses. And
I like the aroma.
for some reason they call it frontier whiskey. I don't understand what the hell that means.
It's because it comes in a bottle that
That looks
they
like
would
it
have
should be
had
from
on
the
the frontier. Yep.
That's very clever. So we'll see what this one's like. I remember this being more of a spicy forward profile. I remember it being a little rye forward.
Yeah, I can smell like red hot.
And
in
I
there.
will say, I had a friend of mine who loved Bullet Rye, and that was his go-to. And I always made fun of him for it. But then I went over to his house and I tried Bullet Rye, and I was like, damn, it's not bad. It's not bad. So I'm kind of curious to see what the bourbon is like.
I don't think Bullet, they don't make any higher end bottles, do they? They only have.
They have a Bullet 10-year.
Oh, that's right. They do have a 10-year.
And I don't know if I would know that if I tried it.
Mhm.
This isn't very good either, Paul.
But I do like the aroma on it.
I
It's
like
got
it.
the most interesting aroma.
It's spicy. It's got more cinnamon note to it.
Mhm.
Like you actually get a little bit of cinnamon red hot in there for a bourbon, which is
Yeah.
kind of weird.
I know. That's what I'm saying. Very rye forward.
Yeah, it's actually, you're right. It smells good. It's better than the Maker's Mark. All right. I think that ranks as my
I'm putting that at number 2.
number 2 so far.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's better than the Maker's. It's better than the Nelson.
I'm putting right now. I've got Maker's second last,
Yes.
and then Nelson, and then Bullet, and then Buffalo Trace.
Okay, I think we're on the same page.
We're on the same page.
Yeah.
Oh.
As long as Weller Special Reserve is last, we're on the same page.
All right.
All right, so now we're going to go on to Gentleman Jack. Which, do you have any idea what the difference between Gentleman Jack? Oh, I do. Gentleman Jack does an extra charcoal filtration. So
Yeah.
it's essentially it's essentially Jack Daniels.
It's Jack Double Barrel,
It's double
Kind of
filtered.
double filtered. Yeah.
Yeah,
I know.
so it's a second charcoal filtration. So it goes
Which-
through the Lincoln County process.
Which
twice.
actually, I know Jack Daniels outperformed what we thought it would last time.
It did. Yeah.
Like,
So this goes
oh,
through.
this comes in a glass bottle too.
I know, it's fancy. It's fancy. This goes through the maple charcoal filtration twice.
Now, Gentleman Jack, I can safely say, is one I don't think I've ever tried before.
And so I've had it once or twice.
It always sounded like a scam to me.
I know. I had to look this up. So I think when Jack Daniels does
whoa.
the maple filtration, the carbon filtration, the whole Lincoln County process,
Mhm.
I think they do that prior to barreling. So they do it after distillation. Gentleman Jack, then they do it
Again, before bottling.
They do it before, I think, again, before it goes before bottling. Yeah. So they do it twice. So they do it on either end. And so the idea of Gentleman Jack is it's supposed to be, quote unquote, smoother.
Yeah, well,
Right.
I can tell you, it smells like straight up perfume. Is what it smells like.
It does.
Holy
Yeah.
shit! Like,
Oh, do you know what it reminds me of? Like, have you ever smelled a slightly rotten, or an overripe apple?
mm-hmm.
It reminds me of that. How it gets kind of florally and kind
Yeah.
of weird. Yeah, that's what it reminds me
It's
of.
strange.
It smells like Jack Daniels, though. I will say that.
It does,
All right,
but
let's give and it has kind of a wet dog smell.
it's quite strong.
So far, this is quite the line upward. Yeah, that's bad. I'm not going to drink any more of it. Wow. That might be as bad as Weller Special Reserve.
You know what that tastes like? It tastes like artificial banana flavoring.
It does. Like if you've had like a banana Laffy Taffy.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, pretty much.
Like if you dipped that in your whiskey. That's
Dude, it smells like yellow Laffy Taffy.
it does now, yeah.
That's
Oh, damn.
exactly what it
That's
smells
so
like.
bad. That's really bad.
Honestly, I don't know if I would know that was whiskey if you poured that for me. I would think it was like some sort of liqueur type.
Really? I
I-
don't think it's that sweet, but
Not that sweet,
it's
but
fruity as hell.
But I
yeah.
mean, I would think it was some sort of flavored, like
yeah.
like Fireball kind of situation. Like I don't know that in a blind taste I would guess like that this is.
Paul.
It doesn't have any aroma that I associate with the bourbon or rye or single malt or anything. It's like they've created their own category completely.
I'm really sad right now, Paul.
Why?
Do you know why that is?
Because this is worse.
It's worse than Weller Special
Weller
Reserve.
Special.
I found one that I hate more than Weller Special Reserve, and that is Gentleman Jack. Like, this would ruin a Jack and Coke.
Yeah.
And nothing ruins a Jack and Coke.
Yeah. So who do you think the market is for this?
People who don't like whiskey.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, do you feel like it's smoother?
Yeah.
It
I do think it's
but
smoother.
it's not smooth. Like,
But it's also, they're all 90 proof. So, I mean,
Maker's Mark tasted like water, right? Wasn't that the one that we said tasted
Yeah.
like water? I guess it's smoother, but it's not maybe as soft. All right, I need to get that.
when
flavor out of
comparing
my
to
mouth.
the Weller, Weller Special Reserve is better.
It's so sad. Like, if your claim to fame is that you're better than Weller Special Reserve, like if that's your marketing push, that's not.
But I'm
good.
not sure.
I'm gonna move on to something that I think is gonna be infinitely better.
No, worse than Weller Special Reserve. That's their claim to fame, is that they're worse.
No, I just meant that that's like.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a low bar,
Right.
that you can't even clear the low bar.
Right. Yeah.
You just run right into it.
Yeah.
All right, we got to. Wow, look at all the comments up there. Are we making people angry, or?
Yeah. Josh Fritz and Mr. Mom.
I like it. I like it.
So let's see. Mr. Mom said he'll drink Maker's Mark if it's poured for him, but he prefers Larceny. I agree.
Yeah. There's no question. Larceny is better.
Yep. Yeah, not a fan of Maker's Mark or Larceny. I really like the Weller line. I've had a 100% malted wheat from Evernorth Spirits, which is really good. I've never heard of that. We'll have to look into that.
I haven't either. Feel free to send us a sample.
Yeah, absolutely. JD and Russell's are favorites of mine as well, says Mr. Mom. Mr. Mom, if you haven't tried the JD single barrel line,
Oh man.
go for that.
Yeah.
And,
People who say they don't like Jack Daniels haven't tried those.
right. And he's saying he likes Jack Daniels, so I assume that's what he's talking about. Although the
It
regular
surprised us last time.
JD was fine. The Gentleman Jack is a strange.
Yeah, that can be skipped. That can be skipped. You don't need to try that one.
All right. What? Woodford.
So
Okay.
here we're
I think
cheating.
I think
We're
this is
obviously going to be. This is a lot higher proof. So this is is clearly going to win.
the 0.4%
At
is
90.4.
gonna edge the others out because
Which-
we all know James is a proof snob.
So that brings up a good point. Why in the hell do you do 90.4?
Because it looks cooler
Does it?
on a bottle.
I get 92, 93, 94 because that tells me like, hey, we went through these, we did a bunch of different dilutions, and this is where we wanted to land.
Nope, that's why 90.4 is because that is the perfect proof.
You can't tell me that anybody could tell the difference between 90 and 90.4. Is it just because you want to be above 90?
Yes.
Okay.
It's because they want to eke out as much product as possible, but they
Be
want to
different.
be able to say that they didn't bottle it at 90 because for flavor, the best proof was 90.4.
Yeah, that's garbage.
Yeah, it's just marketing.
Yeah, but marketing's usually garbage.
Well,
But I get it, I guess.
have you seen
get
how
it.
many flavors are in this whiskey?
74.
At least.
Yeah, the flavor wheel.
Minimum.
Is that the one here?
All right, James. I'm gonna look up Woodford's published flavors in
Oh,
Woodford
Good Lord.
flavors of Woodford Reserve.
God, it smells sweet, doesn't it? By
You know,
comparison
what's
to the
funny
others?
about this to me is like I do notice Woodford to me is always leans on the oakier side of what I consider like the entry level premium bourbons. But by comparison, because some of these are rather bitter, it's actually really good.
Yeah.
Like, it's a noticeable step up.
So I have a Woodford story for you while you look up the flavor profile.
Also, James, you were off by 125 flavors. There are 200 detectable flavors, 212 to be exact.
In Woodford.
In Woodford. Yep.
And they're detectable by
by a mass spectrometer.
Great. So if a mass spectrometer is drinking it,
I'm going to read this
it's
to you,
gonna be really
James, from
flavorful.
Woodford's website, Training Your Palate.
Oh, boy.
How to conduct a tasting. There are more than 200 detectable flavors in Woodford Reserve, 212 to be exact. By comparing the flavor notes of samples within the Woodford Reserve flavor wheel, the subtle flavor cues in Woodford Reserve Distillers Select Bourbon can be experienced. Happy sipping. What you'll need. Woodford Reserve's Distiller Select. Is that this one?
Yes.
I think that's what they call it, right? Distiller Select. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The base.
Their base.
Sorry. The cost effective.
It's
is the Distiller
it's
Select.
selected by the distiller. Mm-hmm.
What you'll need to train your palate. Aged Parmesan and olives, toasted hazelnut, toasted pecan, cashews, Brazil nut, dried cranberries, dried cherry, a slice of orange, dark chocolate, sorghum.
Sorghum. Yeah, because we all just have some sorghum laying around that we can just go eat a sorghum
Maple
grain.
syrup.
Maple syrup, yeah.
Now, to prepare, arrange the samples clockwise. Small plate.
Are you shitting me? Are you not making this up? Like,
I'm not
this is
making this up.
actually on the website?
Conduct the sampling of each in the order indicated below, with each followed by a sip of Woodford Reserve Distiller Select Bourbon. After each, rinse your palate with a sip of water before the next sample. We gotta do this on a future
This is
episode.
by far the most pretentious thing I've ever heard.
How to conduct a proper tasting. Step
Oh my
1.
God.
Chew the food.
That's good. Thanks for reminding me to chew, Woodford. I appreciate it.
Oh my gosh. Sample and breathe through your nose to take in a full breath of the flavors. Step 2. Take a sip of Woodford Reserve's Distiller Select Bourbon. I love how they write out the whole name every time.
Yeah, just to make sure you understand.
Step 3. Cleanse your palate with a sip of cool or room temperature water. I'm sorry. Was I supposed to swallow?
Nope.
Okay, so
No,
I
you
hold it.
never
I chew
swallow.
the food, but I hold it in my mouth. Sip the Woodford Reserve.
And then follow it with water.
I'm gonna write into them and tell them they're missing some crucial steps in here.
Swallow is key.
Step 4. Observe a conversational pause before moving on to the next sample.
You have to be shitting me. Nobody actually wrote this, right? Like we should create this for Two Souls. It's like
Holy shit.
breathe through your eyeballs.
Dude, I'm only like I can't even I'm not even like a third of the way through the
Please
thing.
quit.
I'm
Please
done.
quit. We're good.
We're doing an
good.
episode on this at some point.
We're gonna try. We got to replicate the whole
I can't,
process, right?
Yeah, I can't breathe. I didn't even get to the aged Parmesan.
And that's a damn shame, Paul, that we didn't get to the aged Parmesan.
Yeah. Now that I smell this, I really smell the sorghum.
I mean, that's the first thing I noticed was all the sorghum coming out of the glass.
I'm fucking crying.
It's so sorghum heavy. Did anybody else that's listening taste sorghum?
My dad's watching. He just commented. He's like, he said 90.4 sounds like an FM radio station.
It does. Maybe that's what they were shooting for.
Ooh,
Oh, that was a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, Mr. Mom says he's got a few unopened JD single barrel proofs. And
Yeah, you should open those.
He said he had a 2019 Gentleman Jack that was pretty good, but it's all gone. So maybe that was a magical.
I think you've forgotten how bad it was. I think that's what you've had so much whiskey in between that you killed the brain cells that tasted that whiskey.
Oh my gosh.
Wow, that was.
Yeah, we
that
got
was
to move
fun.
on. I'm dying.
All right, now we're on to the last one. This is
Regardless of what. Regardless of what they were smoking when they wrote their website,
I think it's probably second in this lineup, right?
I'm gonna have to go back to it against Buffalo Trace head to head because it was surprising. Are we on the last one now?
Yeah, we are on Double Oak, which since it's double oak, it only makes sense that it has 424 flavors in there, right?
It should,
It
yep.
picked up double. So this is gonna be even more sorghum and hazelnut.
Double the sorghum.
Like, jeez.
Yeah.
This is so, like, I am always amazed when I try this whiskey. It is so damn sweet on the nose.
Yeah.
It is chocolate, hazelnut, like vanilla, like almost like chocolate covered cherries. Like, it is so decadent on the nose. And
Yeah.
I do not understand why it is that way. A lot of times when you do double barrels or you do double oaked, it just becomes heavier and denser and smokier.
I will say this is heavier and denser.
It is, but it's so sweet.
Right.
And if you read on their website, they do a special char on their secondary finished barrels, and I think that's where this is coming from. It's not like they're using a char 4 or another char 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're doing something different with it. It's probably a really low char or a toast. I didn't look it up. It's probably out there somewhere. But it's a very, very sweet, desserty kind of whiskey. And because of that, I've never been able to drink a whole pour of this. It's just too viscous for me.
I like it, but, and this is for your cousin, I don't recommend you buy. If you're James's cousin, don't buy this. You'll be disappointed. No.
Yeah. Well, this is by far the most expensive of the lineup too.
Yeah. I mean, so what's interesting about this is this jumps all the way. All of these are sub $40. Nelson Greenbrier is the only one that's close to that, and that's just because it's a smaller producer.
It's essentially craft.
Right. Everything else, Woodford and Buffalo Trace are at $30, and then Gentleman Jack's $30 too, I think.
Or maybe even less. It should be 10. It should come in plastic and be $8.99.
And then bullet makers are at like 22, 23, 24.
Yeah.
And I think that's where Special Reserve is too, is 19
$20
bucks or something.
Yeah.
Well,
19 to 20 to $25 range.
Yeah. But this is all the way at like $60 or 50 or $60. So,
and Woodford itself is
35. Well, it's probably 35 now. Yeah.
So we're at a big jump in terms of price there.
Do you think it's twice as good?
It's 10 times as better than Gentleman Jack.
Well, yeah, but I mean compared to regular Woodford.
I don't know if it's worth twice the cost, but I mean, I guess we're talking sort of 1.5. And I do think it's probably it's worth it if you want to take a step up. And I will say, when we've done tastings in the past, like if it's a broad general group of drinkers, people like it.
Yeah.
Because American palates are sweeter. It's not going to challenge you in terms of burn. And if people are used to drinking kind of fairly crappy bourbon that is one note, this is very definitely not one note. No. I would argue that it's the most complex of the ones that we've tried.
Yeah. And I think that's a valid point to bring up, is like probably the only 3 that I could even really do like tasting notes for, that be on like 1 or 2 things without really like without like really stretching and kind of being foofy about it, is probably this, the Buffalo Trace, and the Standard Woodford.
I would agree. Yeah.
And I mean, it certainly helps that there's 424 flavors to choose from.
Yeah,
when you're tasting
you
this.
could literally throw out any flavor and it's in there.
I want to see the list of all. But I do see why, like, some people like your cousin are kind of turned off by it, because it's so intense despite it being low proof. And like I think that's what's never made sense to me about this whiskey, is like it's so intense in terms of flavor profile, but it's so lackluster in terms of actual like delivery.
Yeah. I think you know what it reminds me of.
And
When
I don't. Those two things don't make sense in my
Yeah.
brain.
I think when I nose it, it reminds me of a very heavy sherry finish Scotch when you compare it to another bourbon.
Mm.
It's just so dense, right? And you get so much like sweeter notes out of it that the aroma is almost thick. And that's what I get a lot of times with sherry finished scotches. Like the aroma is just almost overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the same here, especially if you compare it to the standard Woodford. It just overwhelms your nose. But I'm curious to see if it beats Buffalo Trace in kind of a head to head.
I don't think it does. What's weird when you go back to the Buffalo Trace, crazy vanilla. I mean, like vanilla bean, ice cream kind of vanilla. And I think maybe, I think when you compare them, the Woodford is so much heavier. Um, it makes the Buffalo Trace feel like pretty,
It's pretty.
pretty by comparison.
I think
It's- But I feel like it would be so much a preference thing. In terms of just like quality, I don't really, that's hard for me to say between that and the,
well, for me, it always comes down to if someone was going to pour me a glass of this, which one am I more likely to enjoy?
Mhm.
And which one would I be more likely to go back for a second pour for? And it's going to be Buffalo Trace. I have a hard time getting through a full glass or a full pour of the Woodford Double Oak.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of heavy-handed where there's a lot going on, but it almost becomes like too much.
Yeah.
And I think the Buffalo Trace is maybe more of a refined product in that sense.
Have they ever released the double oak as like a cast strength or a higher proof version?
I've never seen it. And I know that even when you pick those, they send it to you pre-proof down.
Pre-proof down.
Yeah, so I've never seen it. It probably tastes horrible.
Well, I don't
It's like
know,
drinking syrup.
yeah.
But
I'm curious because for me, I think that's the failing of that whiskey is
Yeah.
like, I think if it's very approachable for a lot of drinkers because of the sweetness and the boldness of flavor. But the proof, it feels incohesive
yeah,
to me.
I agree. It's kind of all over the place.
Right. Whereas Buffalo Trace and the standard Woodford feel like a polished product.
I agree. So I think for me, Buffalo Trace wins this lineup. Do you agree?
I don't know. I'm between that and the Woodford.
I think Buffalo Trace is better.
Really?
And you know me, that pains me to say.
Pains you to say it. Yeah.
I think it's got more going on in terms of complexity. It's more viscous. It drinks like an older whiskey compared to Woodford. I just think it's better.
Yeah. You know what I think it is? I think it's tricky because lineups skew your perception. Like, I would never in an individual tasting describe Buffalo Trace as so vanilla heavy. Like,
Oh, I would. That's one of the characteristics
Like,
I've always found in it.
like I do think it tastes like vanilla, but when you compare it to the others, it's like that's all you get.
It's just because I think there's older barrels in there, right? Comparatively. And so you just get more of the vanilla. But that's also the flavor profile I pick up in Weller 12. And I think just as Buffalo Trace distillate gets older, that's what I start to pick up on a lot is that vanilla note. Like Weller 12 to me is straight up like artificial vanilla.
I think I like the flavor profile of Woodford better. So I think I'm going Woodford 1, Buffalo Trace 2.
Wow. You are bad at this. So here's what I say we do. I say we try Woodford, Buffalo Trace, and Eagle Rare side by side, and see which one we think wins. I think we can knock out Peg Leg Porker because it's an expensive bottle and nobody's going to find it.
Is it that expensive? The regular one?
I don't know.
I don't think that one's that expensive. And I think you can find it.
Shit.
We're not talking about the 12-year.
Are we going to try all 4? Can I sleep at your house, Paul? All right, let's try all 4. Screw this. I'm doing it.
All right. Yeah, because
This is for you, listeners. That's why we're doing
we'll have
this.
to break this up into a separate video.
I don't think we should. I think
Well-
we should just do it.
Yeah, okay. You calling an audible. You gotta rinse some glasses. Can't go 12 glasses deep. Yeah,
Even you don't have those available.
no. Well, I do, but not in this room. Gotta go to my other room, my second whiskey room. Yeah, you know what's I really I struggle with the double oak because I think the aroma and the initial hit on the palate of the double oak outperforms Buffalo Trace and Woodford. But the finish on it, that low proof, the low proof by comparison to the flavor, just like it's even more obvious.
Yeah.
And the finish, there is no finish.
And I think if you ask most
And it's-
experienced
yeah.
bourbon drinkers, they're going to pick Buffalo Trace over Woodford Double.
Yeah.
So
let's see.
yeah, we can break this up. But if you're
I
watching,
got
you get double
Buffalo
the fun here,
Trace.
right?
and then
All right, I'm going to pour them in this order. I'm going to do
that's Woodford.
Buffalo Trace first. So there's your Buffalo
Right, I
Trace.
gotta rinse a couple glasses here.
Come on, Paul, keep up. And
Well,
then-
I had to talk. I had to vamp while you were.
while I was doing productive stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we'll do Eagle Rare. And we're going to pour enough here that we get a good nose.
Oh
but
my gosh!
but I don't know that I'm going to finish it.
Like we just tasted like 8 whiskeys, and James just poured 2 ounces of
My
Eagle
pours,
Rare in
my
his
pours
glass.
get bigger as I go.
Oh my
That's-
god!
That's one of the problems. And then we'll do Peg Leg Porker last, I think, right?
Yeah.
This is just for the nose, Paul. I'm just pouring some extra for the nose.
Oh my gosh, dude!
That's it. My liver is going to be angry. And then we'll do Woodford Standard third, right?
Yep.
And I think we may have to share this one because there's not a whole lot in there. So we'll share it. Woodford.
Well, there's not a whole lot because you just dumped it all in your glass.
Well, look, there's not that much.
Well, I still have a little in my glass.
Okay, here, you can have some of mine.
Gosh, you didn't have to like
I
bottom it.
licked the whole rim too. So it's got some of my flavor
Okay.
on there.
Well, here, let's. Man, this is like my worst nightmare because now I'm gonna be all confused about where everything is.
You need to be more organized.
Well, I was. All right. Let's see, now I've got 5 glasses. What's this 5th glass doing? All right.
Well, this I know what this is.
Oh, that's because that's your glass that you stuck over here. This has Woodford in it, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's the right one. This is thrilling commentary.
Thrilling commentary. Yeah, well, you just went rogue. And then
did.
what do I need for the last one?
Did you pour Buffalo Trace
Buffalo
yet?
Trace, there we go.
This is high quality shit we're doing right now, Paul. This is why we're the 101st best whiskey podcast.
No, we're the number
there.
1 whiskey podcast hosted by a shark doctor.
That's true.
All right, so we can move all these other bottles down.
Yeah, because they're bad.
Put those out of the way. Then, so our order is
Buffalo Trace Eagle Rare, the empty Woodford Reserve, and Pig Leg Porker.
so. Oh, okay.
All right. So here's the final grouping.
You
So
know, it's crazy. The peg leg porker smells so different.
that's why I almost didn't want to include it.
But it's
an
unique.
entirely different beast. So which one did you put Woodford? Is Woodford
I put them in
last?
that order.
This order?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's where my glasses are.
All right, let's do this.
That's the best I can do.
All right. So let's go. Let's do this professionally.
Oh,
So let's go through and you smell all of them, I'll smell all of them, and we'll say which one we think has the best nose.
Okay.
Okay, ready? Let's again, smelling stuff on live is really intriguing for most people.
Well, while you start smelling, we missed a couple comments here.
Okay.
And this is the most active comment section. Josh Fritz and Mr. Mom are they're having the time of their lives. John Cloud says, only thing in my glass so far tonight is the Weller Special Reserve. And these guys got me not even wanting to take a sip.
Good. Good.
No,
Great.
no. John Cloud, if you like Weller Special Reserve, don't listen to what we're saying about it.
Listen to me. Listen to me. Move away.
Everyone's entitled to their own enjoyment of bad whiskeys. No, I mean, seriously, it's all personal preference. Obviously, as experts, our opinion carries more weight, but that is what it is.
Okay. I got my favorite.
Dan says, I really pity you. I'm drinking GlenDronach Batch 11 cast strength as I watch you suffer through the substandard.
That's just
whiskeys."
rude, man.
That is rude.
That's just rude.
John says he only buys Weller Special Reserve as a consolation purchase after standing in line hoping to get OWA 107 and missing out. Yeah,
I can see where that would happen.
Yeah. Like I said, as bad as Weller Special Reserve is, I've gone and bought a second bottle before.
But that's
just because
you should not admit that on this podcast. We're gonna lose listeners based off that.
No, that you're just heavily biased against.
All right,
it.
so I have my order because
Okay.
I got through them pretty quickly.
All right, you talk as I sniff.
All right, I would read people's comments, but I'm old and I can't see that far.
It's very tiny. Yeah.
Yeah. To me, two of these jumped out as the best, and so I'm curious to see what you land on. And Peg Leg Porker is like entirely different. It stands out, and I mean you could pick it out because it's smoky. Like it almost smells like barbecue or burnt stick.
Right. To me, I think the Peg Leg Porker smells the best.
Really?
I really do. Yeah.
Wow. I don't think it has much of a nose. I think the aroma is really muted. I think you like it because you like peated whiskey, and so
It's possible.
You gravitate towards smoky, but there's not a whole lot coming out of the glass in comparison, in my opinion, to the Buffalo Trace and the Eagle Rare.
Yeah. I think I do think the Eagle Rare has the most sophisticated aroma, though.
It's the most balanced.
Yeah.
I think you could argue the Buffalo Trace is more aromatic. Like
it is.
Because
it's prettier.
It's slightly sweeter.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's prettier. But I think Eagle Rare has a little more balance to it. And it just feels...
I'm double checking the order.
Okay.
Making sure I got everything.
And it feels a little more balanced than the Buffalo Trace does. And I don't get a whole lot other than smoke on the Peg Leg Porker. Like it's,
Really?
It's
Yeah, but the smoke is so inviting.
It's smoky and there's like a kind of a honeyed note to it.
Yeah.
But I think Eagle Rare to me is probably the best nose. And then I would go Peg Leg Porker 2 and then Buffalo Trace because it feels out of balance compared to the other two. And then Woodford's my least favorite on the nose.
Well, Woodford certainly has the most restrained nose. Like I really can't smell it at all compared to the.
And it feels the most like basic out of the noses. Like if you handed that to me, I'd be like, yeah, that's bourbon.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where the Buffalo Trace to me has. I think when you put it right side by side against the Eagle Rare 10, the Eagle Rare 10 is just smells a little bit older, a little more refined. And the Buffalo Trace is a little bit brighter because of that vanilla bean kind of character going on.
Yeah.
Like you said, a little more fruity, a little more aromatic.
And by the way, regular Peg Leg Porker I'm finding online for like $70.
Oh.
So it's a wee bit of a jump up there.
Yeah, I thought it was like 40.
No.
Or 45 or something. But I didn't buy it. It was a gift. So
yeah.
Shows what I know.
All right, so let's do palate on these. I'll go through first while you entertain the masses.
Should I do a song and dance?
You should. Actually, you're pretty good at instruments. We should be having you play some
Yeah, that's true.
guitars or something.
You know, I thought about that for the episode we did about the soloist, the fiddle stuff. I was like, I should have been on here fiddling, but I'm not that good.
You're not? I thought you were.
I'm a legend in my own mind, James.
Okay, I'm good on palette. I know which one I
You
want.
good on palette? You know which one you want? Do you know you got the full ranking already?
I do.
Or you got first and last?
No, I got the full ranking.
Oh, damn. Okay. Well, give it to me.
I'm a pro, Paul.
It's
Like,
true.
I need one sip of everything.
I'm going to struggle with this just based on. We might owe Andrew Sims an apology.
That's what I was just thinking. Like, damn it, Andrew. Damn it.
Thankfully, he's not watching.
Maybe that's the thing. Maybe it's the perfect 90 proof bourbon.
Dude, this makes me mad, though.
I know, I'm kind of pissed.
Yeah, because we've talked a lot of shit about Eagle Rare.
But it has a lot more going on than what you think it does.
Now, I will say, I still enjoy the peg leg porker more. But it's just because it has that unique smoky quality to it that I like. And it does. It reminds me, it's like an American version of an Isla whiskey, kind of.
I think what puts
But the
me off-
palate's thin.
that's what I was just gonna say. I think what puts me off of it is how thin it is.
But the aroma is so, dude, like if you had a rack of ribs or some wings, that aroma is just like, that's.
But it doesn't hold up in terms of viscosity and
No, it doesn't.
overall flavor profile.
Nope.
Buffalo Trace and Eagle Rare, despite being 90 proof, coat your palate.
Yes.
And obviously we're not trying this against ones that are 120, 130 proof. But Eagle Rare particularly jumps out in terms of how it kind of just spreads over your tongue and over your palate.
Even the Woodford does a better job than the peg leg porker.
Yeah.
On the palate, the aroma. So, yeah, I think. Okay, I'm gonna give you my ranking first.
Okay.
You were very definitive that you have yours set in stone,
Yeah.
so I don't think I'm gonna sway you. I think if you are into aromatics in your whiskey a little bit more, peg leg porker is gonna be number 3. And I think if you're more about the palate, Woodford Reserve would be number 3. I think those in this particular lineup, Woodford Reserve has nothing interesting on the aroma going on. The palate, though, is pretty quintessential bourbon. It's got a nice amount of body for the proof that it's at. The peg leg porker is thin, despite being at 90 proof. But it's got a lot more aromatics going on.
Yeah, I agree.
But neither of them is cohesive compared to Buffalo Trace and Eagle Rare.
Right. So which one of those two do you prefer?
Eagle Rare 10.
Yeah, me too. So my order was Eagle Rare, Buffalo Trace, Peg Leg Porker, and Woodford Reserve.
Yeah. Dang.
And I'm kind of mad. I'm not going to lie. But Eagle Rare, I mean, we are talking about, essentially a 10-year single barrel. And so you would think that it would be the best of the group. And it is. And I think maybe that says something a little bit about, people always talk about viscosity and whether or not a whiskey's thin, right? And I think a lot of times we relate that to proof. And we just assume that the lower the proof, the thinner the whiskey. But I don't know that that's necessarily the case. Sometimes it's the density of flavor. And if it is older, and if it's pulling more flavor from that barrel, I think you can still have density of flavor at 90 proof.
Yeah.
It's going to be more rare. There's no question than, at 120 proof or 130 proof. But in this case, I think it stands out. It's definitely more viscous. It has more depth of flavor than the peg leg porker and the Woodford Reserve at the same proof. And I just think Buffalo Trace is similar in terms of depth of flavor, but I think the Eagle Rare is more in balance because of the extra age.
Yeah, it really upsets me too. So this is one of those classic situations. Josh says we got to taste them blind to get a real result. I do on some level. I agree. Like a blind taste is the only way to know 100% that no bias has taken part in this. However, I would have told you coming into this that I would put Peg Leg Porker number one, probably, because it's certainly the bottle that I reach for the most of all of these. In fact, a lot of these I wouldn't even purchase to put in my collection, particularly like Eagle Rare Buffalo Trace. I would not like. I end up with bottles of Buffalo Trace somehow. I don't know how it happens, but I I don't buy them, and they end up here somehow. Either because somebody gives it to me, or I need it for a tasting because somebody requests it or something. And I would certainly think that the Peg Leg Porker was a better bottle in my mind coming into this.
And we had that conversation before we did the last one, because you pulled it out and I was like, I don't know that that's fair.
Right.
Like this is a much higher end whiskey,
right,
technically speaking, than a lot of the other bottles. And I notoriously crap all over Buffalo Trace whenever I get the opportunity.
Right.
And so, and I would say too that for a lot of folks, yes, I think blind tastings are the gold standard. And if I was trying to do something with really high end whiskeys, I would do it blind. But
which we have done in the past, by the way, for
but you and I have tried so many whiskeys that I think it's easier for us to be a little bit unbiased when it comes to something like this. None of these bottles are anything I'm going to chase.
Right.
But I do think we can separate the brand and some of the other, especially at the same proof.
Yeah.
Right. We can separate the brand from the quality.
Yeah. And I would say that I feel comfortable saying that that's true, specifically because I've noticed my own, just in my reviews on Malt Mondays and in, my personal life, my private whiskey experiences, that I am far less impressed by brand, price, etc. than I was the first 5 years, that I was into whiskey. Like I can distinctly remember whiskeys that I tried where I was like, this is the first $200 bottle that I've tried, or this is my first time tasting Weller, or this is my first time trying a Buffalo Trace Antique Collection, and like just being dumbfounded by how incredible it was, and going back to that whiskey now and being like, it's okay.
Your opinions change over time as your palate adapts.
And yes, your opinions change, your palate adapts, but also when you haven't had whiskeys of that caliber before, there's a lot in your brain of preconceived notions of telling you, like, everyone with more experience than me has told me this is going to be a transcendent experience, or whatever it is. And which is why, like, when we did the blind of the was it Blanton Single Barrel versus
the
Stag?
Yeah.
Like, going into that, I would have thought, like, probably Stag's going to win. But having tried both of them, I knew it was going to be closer than you might suspect.
Right.
And I think, in fact, the Stag was between the two. One of the Buffalo Trace Single Barrels was better, one was worse. And obviously every year Stag is different. So, yeah, I think, obviously, like Josh is saying, you don't really, really know without a blind or a double blind experiment. There's always some bit of bias. Like, obviously, Weller Special Reserve was the best one here, and only
clearly
it only lost
because
I
hate on it.
James' bias.
And I've done that one blind, and it was still bad. But so, I agree. I don't think we could do it blind, and maybe we would prefer Buffalo Trace over Eagle Rare.
Right. But if you went back through the pantheon of Whiskey Uncut media, you would find many negative comments about Eagle Rare 10.
Yes. And I will say too, like, you could argue that it depends on if you've had whiskey before, if you just had food. Like, there's so many damn variables that can come into play.
Tasting a whiskey on its own versus in a lineup, very
different. Yeah. And the order. And we didn't sit here and I hadn't tried Bullet and Woodford Reserve in years, so I didn't know the exact order to put them in.
Right.
But I do think that this is representative of generally what we prefer and what's probably better in terms of this ranking.
Okay.
So there you go. Number 1, Eagle Rare. Number 2, probably Buffalo Trace.
Before we wrap up, one, I spy with my little eye a couple of special bottles over there, James.
Yeah.
Are those because you're going away and you want to partake?
Yeah. So we can end on this.
We can end on this, and so I want a fresh glass for that. By the way, I don't want to taint it.
I warmed it up a little bit, but I brought this because like I said, I'm moving and I'm packing everything up, and there's no point in bringing like 4 ounces of a whiskey with you, right? And I was watching a video this past week. Fred Minnick was reviewing a rye, and off the top of my head, I can't even remember what rye it was, but he gave it an excellent rating. But he said that the best Kentucky rye that he's ever tried was Booker's Rye.
What?
Yeah, and I was like, dude, that is like, and I honestly agree.
Oh, best rye.
Yeah.
I thought I heard best bourbon he's ever had was Booker's bourbon.
No,
and
no.
I'm like,
No, best rye he's ever had. He said best Kentucky rye he's probably ever had was Booker's Rye, and I agree. To me, it is probably the best rye I've ever had. It's in the top 5 best whiskeys I think I've ever had. And this was
there's a little more in there.
This was a present for my 40th birthday, so this was a while ago. 8 years. It's 2016. And I figured this is the last time that we're gonna do this in person for a while. I'm gonna be coming back and forth, so we can probably do it in person again. But I thought this was a good sign off and a way for us to sort of wrap up probably what is gonna be season 3 for an extended period until
Season 4.
Season 4 until we figure out the rest of this.
So this is limited edition, bottle 5698, 68.1%, age 13 years, 1 month, 12 days.
And this was
thank you
$300 or $400 new when I bought it. I have no idea how much this is. Probably $4 or $5 grand, $3 grand,
probably
something like that. But they never did it again, as far as I know. And this is one of the best ryes I've ever had. So, cheers, Paul. It's been fun doing this in person. Hopefully, we can get to do it a couple more times. But I thought it was a good way for us to kind of sign off.
Yeah, absolutely. This is
and this is going to be infinitely better than anything we just tried. Leaps and bounds.
Yeah. Just smelling it is the problem with this is like I can sit here with this amount for like an hour and a half.
Well,
easily.
You can sit there as long as you want, man.
So let's see. Josh asked, would you guys give a synopsis of your collection?
Oh boy.
Basic 5 bottles. Josh, you might have to explain that a little bit. As far as, do you mean like top 5 bottle? You said like basic 5 bottle.
5
like
that we go back to?
Like 5 we go back to, or 5 we recommend?
I will say my collection, because I just packed it up, was literally all over the place. But I have very, very few things under 100 proof. And I have more bourbon than rye. And I have a ton of single barrels. And so it's very skewed. Like, it's extremely curated. Like, that's what my collection is. Maybe he responded.
Oh no, he was talking about something else.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I would say basic 5 bottles. Well, my collection's more Scotch centric, so I'll answer from that side.
Yeah.
I would say Highland Park 12-year-old. Because that's going to give you a gentle peatiness, gentle smokiness, a little bit of sherry cask influence without going overboard. 40% natural color. I'm gonna steer you away from a lot of the a lot of the more like blends, like Johnny Walker kind of stuff. I mean, you can try that if you want to. I think you'll pretty quickly realize that single malt's a big step up, even at the same price point. Um, there are some good blends from companies like Compass Box. I would say Spice Tree is a good
That's a
one.
good bottle.
Yeah, that's a good bottle, and it's also like $60. That's gonna be. It's got some French oak, some Spanish oak influence. I don't think any sherry cask on that one. And then I would look at something like I'd probably go, you know, Glenfiddich is kind of hit or miss. If you're not really into whiskey, like Glenfiddich can be a nice place to start. But I think Balvenie is a big step up from Glenfiddich's sister brand. So Balvenie 12-year-old single barrel is $70 a pop, and you're getting 46.8%, I think. Natural color, all bourbon cask, which is really, really nice. Let's see, I got two more, right? And then I would try something heavily peated. I would try Ardbeg or Bamor 12-year-old, Ardbeg 10 or Bamor 12-year-old. Those are both going to be in the $50 range. I personally think Ardbeg's a higher quality spirit than Bowmore, but it's going to be a little more on the ashtray kind of side of the smoke. And then the last one, I would go something like that's got a lot of sherry cask influence, and that would be Glendronach 12-year-old. So
that we've tried all of those, I think, on the show, and
Mhm.
those are all pretty good bottles. I think on the bourbon end for me, if you've been listening to this for any length of time, you know my deep, deep love for Wild Turkey Kentucky Spirit. And it's weird. I have so many bottles of bourbon, and I regularly go back to that bottle. And I think it's because I can drink it regardless of the mood I'm in. If I want something that's easy, it's kind of easy. If I want to pick it apart, I can pick it apart. If I want something with a kick, it has enough of a kick. Like it's just so flexible that I really, really, really enjoy it. I will put J. Henry in there. I think that's my favorite craft. So if I'm going to give a second bourbon, I'm going to go with a craft bourbon. Anything from them, I think, is phenomenal. And I love everything they do. We have a couple more collaborations with Two Souls coming up from them, and I'm super excited about it. On the rye end, I think we both love Balboa rye.
Speak of no other rye than this,
Yeah.
dude. I just tasted it. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Nuts. It's nuts.
I'm like I'm having a moment over
I know.
You know, it's funny because we were just talking about transcendent. With this
is one of them.
Yeah.
I think new riff Balboa rye.
Yes.
I think is phenomenal.
That bottle's insane. There's no way they should only be charging $50 for that. No, in my opinion,
it's really, really good. And then there's a couple others. I think Woodinville is a really nice rye. Like you really like that at cast strength. I think some of the High West single barrels of the double rye are really, really nice if you get a chance to grab those. And I'm kind of lost on another bourbon. I gave a couple there, but I'm kind of I'd have to go back and kind of look at my collection and walk through them. But
well, you said Kentucky Spirit, right?
Yeah.
Did you say JD single barrel rye?
I did not. That's a good one.
That's a good rye.
Yeah. And this is hard to find, but I do really think Booker's is one that sort of gets lost when we talk about cast strength. Booker's is just damn good. And again, it's another bottle that I'm starting to see more often at bars. I'm starting to see more often on shelves. It's $130, so it's a stretch. But it is a really, really nice bourbon. And what I like about Booker's is it shows you that a 5, 6, 7 year bourbon is still can be elite, can be phenomenal.
Yeah. John Cloud asks, what is the difference? Kentucky Spirit, basically a Wild Turkey 101 single barrel.
Yeah, so it is essentially the same distillate as 101, but it's the premium barrels of it.
Right.
They don't really disclose age, so it could be a little older. It drinks a little bit older, but I know that like when you do a single barrel pick, they send you basically Russell's Reserve, and then you can dilute it down to 101
Mm-hmm.
to make it Kentucky Spirit. So they send you the same, it's the same product as Russell's Reserve as a single barrel, but you just dilute it down to 101 versus 115. So it's basically
It's just
the premium
it's the honey barrels.
Yeah, it's the honey barrels of 101.
Right.
And 101's good. So if you're going to get the honey barrels of 101, you could do a lot worse.
Right. And then I've I even noticed like the Jigs pick of the Kentucky Spirit that we had was better than the subsequent bottle of it that I got.
Yeah.
So like it's
There's
still a single barrel.
fluctuation.
It's still a single barrel. So like
that reminds me. You know what the other bottle I will recommend that I'm starting to see more often is Four Roses single barrel.
Yes.
For a long time I never saw Four Roses single
It was
barrel.
gone for a while. It got too popular.
Yeah, it was just gone. I never saw it. It is really damn good.
It's really good.
I've had a couple pours of it at bars recently, and it's excellent. It's better than the single batch select.
I think it's still at $50. Well, it was $40 like 10 years ago.
I think it's about
up
50
to
now.
50 now.
Yeah, but it's better than the single batch select.
Yes.
Or the small batch select. It's better than that. It's better than anything that you're probably going to find in that price range. It's a really damn good bottle, and I think it's 100 proof, so it's got enough kick to it. But it's hard to beat Booker's Rye.
All right. So before we wrap up and say goodnight to the fans for the TikToks,
How much maple is there in that?
give me your review of Booker's Rye, because then we can post it to TikTok and get 10 million views.
I kind of want to take a bath in it. It's like maple and piney with those like classic rye spices. You get a little bit of baking spice in there. You get a little bit of clove, tons of vanilla, and then a little bit of caramel, which I normally don't get caramel / butterscotchy notes in rye because I think the rye flavor overwhelms those, particularly at this high of a proof. But bringing in that kind of chewy caramel burnt brown sugar note in this is just amazing. It is the best balanced rye I've ever had.
So what I was going to say is like my first thought of this is like lock, stock, and barrel 21 or 18, I think, is like going to that where it's got this maturity to it and this depth of flavor that I don't associate with rye whiskey. But it is a brighter, more dynamic rye than that. That was, while also excellent, the Lock, Stock, and Barrel series edges more towards muted mahogany, that, like the leather armchair rye, right? Yeah. This, I feel like I just walked into a forest in Canada.
Yeah, it's very
and
piney.
Like it's got some pine character to it. You can smell. It smells like that forest mist. The and then exactly what you're saying. The caramel, the richness to it, the dried fruitiness that's there is.
There are a few bottles that I will miss.
This has 212 flavors.
I will miss this.
Yeah.
And I just recently went to a bar in Texas and had a pour of Saz 18, and I forgot how good Saz 18 was. This is leaps and bounds better. And I know that there's a proof difference, but I would put this in the top 3 to 5 bottles of whiskey I've ever had. It really is a special, special bottle. If you're traveling anywhere and you see a bottle of this and it's $100 a pour, I might do it. I might do it.
I would do,
just because
I would pay like $200.
Just because you're never going to try anything this good. I think the average whiskey drinker is never going to try anything this good.
No. And what's crazy to me is like it has a 9 out of 10 aroma. And then you fucking taste it.
And it's
like
than what the aroma tells
and it's like 15 out of 10.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm getting a little bit of black licorice now on the finish. There's just so much going on with this. It's a great bottle for us to end our like in-person tastings on. Hopefully we get to do more of these, but
yeah, I was trying to think. I'm like, man, I need to pour something for James before he leaves. I'm like, nothing can compare to.
And now I can't drink anymore. And
right, I don't know if I have anything in my collection that can even stand up to that. Probably not.
Oh, I'm sure you do, but this is pretty phenomenal. So, cheers, everybody. I would argue that if you have a chance to pamper yourself with a pour when you go to a bar, if you're sort of wavering on it,
dude, if you ever see this,
just buy it. Just buy it.
Just try it.
Same way with Stag. Same way with like Saz 18.
I'd say William LaRue Weller's up there.
Yeah. Give yourself a pour every once in a while, and you can cut back on some things here and there, but
especially because like
it's game changing.
Especially because like here's my rule on that. If you're one of those people that has a connection and you get bottles of stuff like this, obviously don't waste your money at a bar on it because like you're getting the bottle, right? But if you're like me and you never get the opportunity to get a bottle of anything like this, or BTAC or whatever it is, Pappy, it is 100% worth it to drop $50, $100 on a pour once a year on something that is super rare and deservedly so.
Yeah.
Like we talk a lot about like the Buffalo Trace stuff being overhyped or, whatever. But as you saw, we tasted 16 90 proof bourbons, and what were the top two? Both from Buffalo Trace.
Now that's among 90 proofers, but yeah.
Right. So if your budget for whiskey is $30 for a nice bottle, obviously you're going to go to the best ones are going to be from Buffalo Trace, or, they're going to be in the top echelon of those. But when you talk about the really premium stuff, I mean, this is one of those bottles that absolutely deserves all of the hype.
Yeah.
And all of the... Now, I'm nowhere near wealthy enough to say like, oh, I would drop $5,000 on a bottle or, whatever the secondary market on it is.
But if I was going to, it would probably be one of these. Yeah. I think next to the 2014 Stag, which I've said repeatedly on here is my favorite bourbon ever, this is probably my favorite bottle I've had. It's hard to beat. It really is hard to beat.
It's insane.
Some of the old school, like I've had the 2015 and the 2016 William LaRue Weller, and those are like iconic, right? It's right up there with those and the 2014 Stag for me. It's the best rye I've ever had.
The finish just goes on for minutes.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So glad I could share it with you. I think it's a good way for us to sort of end it.
How did they? I don't understand how they make shit like this.
My guess is that it's a total accident. Like they were like, you know what? Let's make some rye, and they set it down and they tried it like 10 years later, and they were like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And they just bottled it.
That's what I was going to say. Actually, I would say the only thing that compares this is the old Fitz from like the 1960s that you had a bottle of.
Oh, that's like 100% Stitzel Weller.
Right. Yeah.
I just packed that. I have like
you still have a little bit
100 milliliters left of it, and I refuse to drink it.
Right.
But I agree. It's in that echelon, and I think this is why like Booker. Everybody was wondering if they were going to come out with a Booker's Rye 2. This is why they didn't.
Yeah.
Like you can't follow this.
So here, before we wrap up, I mean, I missed a lot of comments, but there's too many.
There's a lot. Yeah, we have some active folks.
I just got to say, like, this is one of those whiskeys that makes you realize, like you're saying, it must be an accident because otherwise they would do it again. Like,
right.
Like if it was in their power, they would make whiskey this good again.
All the time. Yeah.
And I think that just goes to show, like, as much as we kind of talk about, like, oh, well, these whiskeys are refined or, like, it's a general produced product, like, it's pretty impressive when distilleries can make a quality whiskey repeatedly. Because when you get to taste some of the one-offs that are, like, truly astronomically good, it makes you realize, like, wow, like it must be really rare to get the stuff that's, you know.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point too. It's like if it's this good, you don't necessarily need to follow up with something else. Like the
Yeah.
sequel is very rarely as good
Right.
as the original, and
And certainly they just wait until everybody who's gotten a bottle of this, it's all gone, you know,
Yeah.
and I'm sure in like 5 years from now, because this came out in 2016, right?
yeah,
So maybe every 10 years they'll release a bottle of this. And
it's just so good. I mean, I'm so thankful I got a bottle of this. I was able to sort of snag one for my 40th, and it's it really changed my opinion, I think, of what a, a rye whiskey can taste like. This and the Lock, Stock, and Barrel 18 are two of the better ryes I've had, and I'm excluding all the shit I've done. But it's so good. It's so good,
it's, yeah.
and yeah. I'm glad I could share it, and if anybody out there sees it, if you go to a bar, I don't care how much it is,
Well,
you should consider buying it.
you just totally screwed up our Whiskey Uncut Awards for season 4.
This should not count. Yeah, that should not count. But yeah, cheers everybody.
I think you're gonna be licking the neck of the bottle here.
I see a
draining that.
little bit in there
Yeah.
yet, so I'm gonna kill that. Maybe let's just take that right out of the bottle.
Oh, baby,
Yeah, let's.
it deserves it.
There's like, what is that? An eighth of an ounce?
Yeah, that's baller.
I'm telling you, man. There's not a whole lot out there that's better than that.
No, pretty much not.
So, I know that Fred Minnick needs my validation because obviously he watches this all the time. He's
Right.
like, "Oh, do I agree with James?" Yeah, I agree with you, Fred.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you guys for watching. This has been fun.
And this is kind of a double episode, right? We'll probably break this up. So if you were listening live, like you got two.
We
two
probably
shows in one.
probably will, because we'll break it up into the second part.
Yeah.
In which case, I'll do some sort of like little interstitial thing, reintroducing it.
You
But
play some guitar.
no, not that. But thank you guys for watching. Remember, it may be a little while before our next episode. We gotta figure out what's going on.
Hopefully in the next I think we'll do it in the next month for sure. But yeah, keep an eye out. We'll maybe push some small videos out there in the meantime. I'm sure
Yep.
there's some things we can cut up and put out there.
Backlog.
But get back with us because I think it'll still be
Yep.
it's still going to be regular and we'll still do a really good job with it.
And thank you guys for watching. Remember, drink, share.